Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the virtual CISO moment. We have a very special guest on today. Courtney Hans joins us today. She is the VP of Services for Amtrust Cyber. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
We'd love to hear about your story. And in particular, you've got a really bit of an interesting story in that you didn't start out on the cyber journey. So let's start from the beginning and get into why and how you pivoted into cyber.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the career reinvention. I think I'm on my third major career reinvention now. But I grew up in California, went to undergraduate English literature major or English major. I like to tell people I use it. I speak English every day. It's a bit corny, I know, but that's me. So we might as well start off on that foot. And right after college, I went and worked for a company called Backroads, still one of the largest adventure travel companies out there, doing incredible hiking, biking, multi-sport vacations all over the world. So I was a guide for them. So right out of college, given a large degree of responsibility, credit card, keys to a van, take these guests out, show them a good time, make sure they get off the trail, off the road safely. And
I think I've actually engaged Backroads on some vacation
have you
somewhere.
really?
It sounds very familiar, but
Yeah.
you might have been a guide like many moons ago. I don't know, but
It was many moons ago at this point. But I love it. I joke with my kind of half joke with my husband that in our retirement, that's going to be our retirement job. So we'll go back to guiding. So we'll see. I'm also an introvert, so it takes its toll, but it's fantastic work. Was traveling around Europe. I had the best flip-flop tan because I was chasing the eternal summer, and just got to meet a lot of really incredibly interesting people. Although I've racked my brain at this point and trying to think of, it was a great career survey. I mean, we had the usual suspects for kind of expensive vacations like doctors, lawyers, professional folks. Definitely a lot of overachievers. I remember having firefighters, undertakers. I don't remember having anyone in the cybersecurity profession, but that's also probably because at that time, that's not how we would have talked about it, right? I'm sure I had folks that were specializing in a branch of IT doing work.
yeah, I didn't know what a cyber was back
Right.
like around 95 or 2000.
Exactly. So I'm like, I'm sure I did have those folks on the trip, but I never would have imagined it then. But, hindsight's 2020. Now, when I look back, I think about just how well or how amazingly that job and that work prepared me for the work that I do now. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir and folks that are in this work with us now, but taking a lot of very intelligent, strong-willed, capable, maybe type A people and making them think that your idea is their idea, right? That was definitely a skill honed in those days of herding cats. They were lovely people. I don't mean that disparagingly. Actually super fun. The sort of people that would choose that for their vacation tended to be really fun, engaged, interesting, curious people. And on that topic of curiosity, right, that has served me well. When we were guiding, as Backroads guides, you were always tasked with really deepening your knowledge constantly about the areas that you were working in. So they didn't expect us to know everything about everything, but maybe an inch deep, mile wide, and then go deep in an area that were you really interested in. Like I guided in Yosemite quite a bit and got really into the geology of the region. Loved talking to both adults and kids about how the glaciers formed the valley, what kind of rocks were there, why we saw the formations that we did. And that's really connected because, again, as you know, curiosity is one of our biggest assets in security.
Yes, I was actually on a podcast yesterday recording. So I'm taking somebody else's thunder because it's not my podcast. It's the cyber talent fireside chat. We were talking about the investigative mindset of those that are in cyber. It's so important to ask questions, and I think that's what's lacking between like I was saying yesterday that I think that some folks in cyber aren't terribly competent And I think that that's because their passion is more about like trying to earn like high dollars as opposed to the investigative mindset, the wanting to ask
Right.
questions. So I didn't
Right.
mean to step in the middle of your story, but
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, well, I could talk about this I was just reading an article the other day about, leadership principles and active listening being one of them. And I've given talks about how important it is to make sure that you are trying not to make assumptions about your coworkers, about organizational goals, that you have these conversations and you listen to understand,
Mhm.
right? Not listen to respond, which, so many of us, I'll be the first to raise my hand in this industry. Certainly women suffer from imposter syndrome. And so there's this feeling that you always have to prove yourself, or you can't say, I don't know. But that I don't think serves anyone's best interest, right? The more curious you are, the more questions, the investigative mindset, as you said, not only helps us work with our peers, with our colleagues, to stay on the same side of the table when we're solving problems, if you will, but it also really helps uncover both the spoken and unspoken goals and needs of the business, right?
Mhm.
And I know we haven't gotten to that part yet, but that's a big soapbox that I'll have, is that security shouldn't be in conflict with the business. Security enables business growth.
Absolutely.
But I'll get back on that soapbox. And um, guided for 10 years, loved it. Finally decided, okay, maybe I don't want to travel 99% of the time. I'd like to have a plant or a dog or a relationship and stay in one place. And so decided that I had a lot of skills that I felt were valuable to the more traditional workplace, but I didn't have the vocabulary really to communicate that to employers. So I made the decision to go and get my MBA. A WCer, so I went back to the University of California school system and got my MBA at UC Davis. Loved
Mhm.
my classmates there. Really enjoyed that experience. Graduated in 2009, which we may recall was really just the best time to be looking for a new job.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, I
Right?
remember that was tough. I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen tougher times since then, but it's a good point that
this is
it's
true.
also cyclical. So,
This is true. But that's okay. It worked out okay. Catching up with classmates. There's a lot of folks graduated, didn't have a job, went back to this. A lot of people went back to what they had been doing, but with a new skill set, a new vocabulary, new contacts that we all have, have utilized in the many years since then. But I spent the next decade in, as my kids would say, business, business, business. Worked in the experiential product industry. So by that, I mean the wine industry, which is a great one to be in as well, just like travel. Went back into the travel industry more on the operational side instead of the field side. Spent a number of years at REI Adventures, which actually was just announced that they're shuttering that division at REI, but that's also another conversation.
oh, I'm sorry to hear
Yeah,
that.
I'm really sad to hear about it. But that's also another story for another day. But spent about 7 years at REI. I loved my time at the co-op. My colleagues, incredibly talented folks at REI Adventures that were, I'd like to say, responsible for a very profitable department within the co-op, and it was a brand differentiator.
Mhm.
Did that work. Also looked at the co-op's new strategy moving forward as retail has changed, as we all know, in the last decade and a half, and enjoyed that work tremendously. Was there when COVID hit. So this won't come as any surprise to anyone, I don't think, but was one of the COVID layoffs during that time. REI had to do a 25% workforce reduction.
Mhm.
And that was actually the fourth time in my career that I've been laid off. And I attribute that to always being attracted to new entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial work, work that hasn't quite been proven out. You take a chance. Sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. Doesn't
Right.
mean the chance wasn't worth taking. So, again, it's contextual. We're in the risk business in
Exactly.
ways. So I don't regret any of those jobs. And every single one of those layoffs actually positioned me for a better path. It was certainly, I'm a big believer in the redirection. So at that time, I decided that I wanted to go back into something I just dabbled into in undergraduate and go into software development. So I looked into and started taking a course on software development with a boot camp here in the Seattle area that I loved. It's no longer around. It's called Code Fellows. And at the time, Code Fellows was starting up a cyber program as well. And so I thought, well, I'll take a look at that, and poked around a bit, met with the instructor for the program, talked about the opportunities there, and thought, well, I'll give that a try. If I don't like it, I'll go back into software development, because I really, this ADHD brain really loved looking at a code editor, just help keep me focused. And I was about a week into that program, and I never looked back. I loved it. I quickly realized that the business background that I had was my superpower within the space, that I was able to translate sort of tech speak to the business folks and translate business speak to the tech folks, and help, again, unite these goals, help illuminate the fact that we should all be working in the same direction, that, again, security complements the business growth. It spurs business growth. It is a business enabler. And I could say so many versions of that so many times, and I believe it to my very soul.
Yeah,
but
it is such a differentiator among folks out there. We talk about the candidates and the job market and all that, but a lot of folks don't understand that information security, cybersecurity, ultimately, this is a business function. I mean,
right.
Yes, it's cool to do threat hunting and to find all the vulnerabilities and to fix
Super
them and all
cool.
that. But there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
And the reason isn't because it's cool. The reason is because it helps the business stay in business, to make money and to make products and to make society better. So I think that's a great path up through there. That I totally agree that many don't share that.
Absolutely. I think that was part of the topic I talked to Pete on Fireside Chat about too, is the non-tech skills that are essential, I think, for growth and success in the industry. What active listening skills, tying into business objectives, understanding the business objectives and the concerns of other functional business leaders. Because if you come in with suggestions, with controls, with processes or policies that stymie the business, you're not going to make a lot of friends. And there'll be a lot of folks that'll say, well, I'm not here to make friends, and that's fine. I get it. But relationships get things done is just the fact of life. Humans are social creatures. We respond better to people that we have at least respect for, if not warmth toward. And so building these relationships and understanding how to connect and speak somebody else's language is critical to success. And again, that's business, that's emotional intelligence. That's just trying to see the forest for the trees.
And so what's your main focus now over at Amtrust?
At Amtrust?
Cyber? Yeah.
At Amtrust, so I've been at Amtrust for about a year, and I was brought on to help build out our services. And there are a number of carriers doing this in the space now. Risk transference, the insurance piece, is just one quiver in the risk management arsenal, right? So that's great. And I anyone that might be listening that is trying to get cyber insurance or encouraging their company to do so, fantastic. Give us a call. But and risk mitigation is another piece, right? Another very important tool in that arsenal. So that's where I come in. I come in to work with our policyholders to help analyze, consult, look at what their environment is, look at where they are, what their, again, business goals are in tandem with their security goals, and help them strengthen their defenses, right? Everybody is a target. Small, medium businesses are just as much a target as large businesses without a lot of the resources. I know I'm not saying anything new here, but we're just trying to make them a smaller target, right? So just a little bit harder, because threat actors are just like everyone else. They're going to adhere the Pareto principle to their work as well. And if they can get a lot of results for a little effort, that's where they're going to focus. And so if we make it just a little bit harder, then we can help protect those businesses. And that doesn't have to be hitting these one-person healthcare providers or these 5-person professional services offices with like tens of thousands of dollars of security spend. It's looking at where they are and what is the most impactful, right-sized, low to medium complexity sort of changes they can make in their environment to make it a bit harder for those attackers.
So with all the businesses that you work with, I'm sure that you've seen a lot of challenges that small and mid-sized businesses in particular have, and in the threat environment is always changing. From your perspective now, what do you feel are one or a couple of the most significant information security and cybersecurity threats to small and mid-sized businesses today?
Yeah. Well, as you've said in your book, I believe that small businesses are facing the same threats as large businesses. So
I wasn't the first one to say that, by the way.
but you've also said it. But we could list off the usual suspects, which are true. Limited budget and resources, lack of awareness, maybe insufficient controls, underestimating the threat landscape, I think, is always a big one. But beyond that, I think the challenge that they're facing is more of a mindset that because they have insurance, they don't need to do anything else. I have spoken with small businesses that have asked this question, and I think it's fair. I don't fault them for asking. If I have cyber insurance, why do I need to consider these other controls too? Like, won't you all just take care of us if something happens? Yes, the Amtrust claims team is phenomenal. However, I equated it to a conversation I would have with the dentist. I have dental insurance. Fortunate to have dental insurance. I still brush and floss every day. I'm still doing everything I can to prevent having to have a cavity filled or a root canal, because even if my insurance covers that financially, it's still time out of work. It's still uncomfortable. It's still a interruption to my daily life, and cyber incident would be the same thing. So
yeah, they're not going to give you, the dentist isn't going to give you a new mouth. I mean,
no,
you have to live with it.
That's
and,
right.
and live with the consequences.
That's right.
That's actually a very good analogy. I might actually steal that at some point.
Thanks. You can have it. That's my gift to you.
Thank you.
Yes, that mindset that they've checked one box and they don't have to continue to evaluate and to grow and to address risk as it pops up. Although I will say, I get it. A lot of these businesses, they don't have an internal security person. They probably don't even have an internal IT person. It's just sort of the person who is the most tech savvy that's sort of setting up their tech, or signing their software contracts and getting those things set up if they have them. So I don't fault them. I think it probably feels complex. And this is, again, where I think not having a more traditional, or at least a more linear technical background in my past, prior to, 4 or 5 years ago, helps me, because I remember being that person as well. Right? It wasn't so long ago that I was the person that thought, well, I don't know how to do that, or that doesn't make sense to me, or I'm reading another language here, I don't understand this. And
do you feel that having that background gives you more credibility and trust when you're talking with folks?
I do. When I meet with our policyholders or agents or brokers that we work with, I do share that piece of my background, that this is where I came from, and then I've been in this field for about 5 years or so. Before joining Amtrust, I was the head. I missed that part in my background. I was the head of security and IT at a SaaS startup. I joined as the first security hire. We were about 48 people or so when I joined, and I was with that company over 500 people. So growing out those functions and dealing with a lot of the things that our policyholders deal with, which is, limited time, limited budget, conflicting priorities. And so I will share that background often with folks, so that, some simpatico, right? Like, they know that I felt similar pain to them. And I think, again, being able to meet people where they are, to not make them feel bad about maybe lack of controls. When I talk to people and I'm asking them, do you have this in place, or do you have this policy? What, do you allow this or whatever? And I see the people have big feelings about this, right? Like they feel like they're letting me down, or they're saying the wrong answer. And I'm like, this is just a friendly conversation. I'm just, again, asking questions to understand where you're at. And that's
empathy,
where I will meet you.
Yeah, empathy is so important, I think. And I was going to ask, well, what do you've already gone down that path to answer about, well, how can we change that compliance mindset? And yes, they want to make sure it's like that they're saying the right answers and asking for approval there. But I think that it is so important that you bring up that having that empathy to I think that not treating it as a transactional engagement, that you're actually having a conversation.
That's
I
right.
know that from my early days as being a CISO, uh, that was where I found the most traction that I would
Mm-hmm.
that I could get with business owners. It's like I'd ask them first. I'm like, tell me about your business. Tell me about
Right.
what it is that you do. Instead of coming in and saying you must have multi-factor
This is
authentication,
my agenda. Yeah.
bring out like a riding crop or something,
Right. Right.
slap it on the table. Do you find that folks respond positively to that?
I I believe so. Yes. I mean, there's still the question of yes, they do. They respond positively. They're friendly conversations. We usually not usually, we always get to a point where there are suggestions that we make that wouldn't engender any additional spend on their purchase. Like, great, toggle that switch on, or maybe disallow that. Easy things to do. Like I said, low impact maybe on their operations, which is good and a concern that people have. But there are some times where a recommendation carries a price tag to it, right? Oftentimes in our world,
Right.
and that's not limited to cyber, but that's the other thing that I think is very challenging for small and medium businesses. Is I think that historically they've been, I'll say, criminally underserved by the industry out there, the product and service industry, because we've got all these major players in the market that, understandably, it's all economics, they're going after enterprise. Their packages, their pricing is sized for enterprise. And then when you get down to these smaller outfits, they can't wrap their heads around the complexity, the cost, the management of the tool, or what have you. And that's also what I'm really trying to help dig in and untangle. Can, via the work at Amtrust, can we help provide that layer of scale that then can unite our policyholders that are on that smaller mid-market space with tools that would have otherwise been perhaps out of their reach from a cost perspective or an expertise perspective with implementation.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that is a soapbox topic of mine, that we as an industry, I don't think that we pay enough attention and care enough about small and mid-sized businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this before on this podcast, but we have like a lot of instances where you have bigger company that has a breach,
Mm-hmm.
and all you hear about is, oh, their third-party risk management failed, and the breach
Right.
came from a smaller
That's right.
vendor, and it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't you do your due diligence? That's not the source of the problem. The
Mm-hmm.
source of the problem is the small and mid-sized business. If we solve that,
That's right.
then we solve the overall problem. But yet our industry, and for the reasons you mentioned, because it is all about money,
Mm-hmm.
they focus on the large ones. Here, this tool will be fine. In fact, let's get some, we can help your vendor management. We'll just throw you another AI tool, because AI
That's right.
is the big deal now. It's
That's
like
the
it can
salvo for
handle
everything.
the 1,500 questionnaires. You can take care of that now with AI.
Yeah.
You'd be
Yeah.
fine. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
But if you look, if there's I can't remember what the book is called, but I think it was a book about how enterprise rent-a-car came to be the business that it is today. And if I recall correctly, it's been a long time since I read it. They did go after smaller accounts, like what they saw as smaller opportunities that in the aggregate helped them build up into the behemoth that they are.
Volume, not margin.
That's
Volume.
right. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping, we can help some of these products and services achieve.
Well, I'm sure, though, it can be stressful when you're trying to convince a business that we're trying to help you with security, and this is the way that you should do it. And it's everything in information security and cybersecurity can be stressful, and particularly nowadays with folks like having issues trying to find jobs and all of that. Although I think the market is improving and is probably going to start accelerating.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I've said that in a while, where I've actually got some good optimism now going forward. But all of us need to not internalize the stress. We need to have
Mm-hmm.
some way to deal with it in some way that's healthy. What's one of the ways that you do to decompress from the stresses of everything cyber?
I love that you focus on this. I
I think it probably had something to do with outdoors. I'm just saying, right off the top of my
it
head.
does. I was going to say, getting outside for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Again, all those years at REI. And I am fortunate to live in the Pacific Northwest, so lots of great opportunities to get up into the mountains, do some hiking, or even just neighborhood dog walks. So that's a big one. Love to stand up paddleboard in the summer, not in the cold, dark winter of January. But and then I also love to bake. So that's more the winter activity, right? Baking. So procrastinating, therabaking. Yeah, I'll send bake.
I've never heard of those terms.
Yeah.
Procrastinating, therabaking. I like that.
Yep, big fans of that. So it's creative with some parameters, kind of like cybersecurity, right? Like, so yeah, that's what I like to do. I got kids, dogs, cats, so family, animals, friends, and a good game of euchre with our best friends. So anyone out there in the Midwest plays euchre?
Yes, euchre. Boy, that was the game of choice when I was in college. And University of Buffalo. I haven't played euchre in ages, but my only euchre times now, talk about totally random thought, is when I go visit my father. And my father is what is he? He's 88, I think now. Inevitably, it just the visit distills down to him and I and a deck of cards, quarter a point, and we just duel it out on the euchre.
Yep.
On the euchre
Sounds like
field.
visits with my dad. Yeah, we have our best friend couple. We play ladies versus men, and we keep track all year round. That resets on January 1st, and we keep track of all wins and losses for the year. And
it's a great game, and
yep.
and it's fun to play when thinking about college, when you're drinking, and you can successfully steal the deal.
Yeah.
Often that was like the more measured. It's like we didn't really care about points and money. We just cared about how many times we could actually steal it.
But
hey,
look
at that!
15 times. Yeah.
Well, tell me about your future plans besides procrastinating and therabaking.
Yeah. I just continue to dive into other topics that interest me. So I'll keep learning. I'll keep looking at what topics I want to focus on next. Keep tinkering with the home lab. But professional goal wise, I want to see Amtrust services be well known for the quality services that we have to offer, and to really keep building that out and address one of the holes that I see in the market. I mean, sure, Amtrust is also, in business, they want to build up profitable departments, and that's great. I support that, of course. Personally, I'm very interested in, as you mentioned, helping these small and medium businesses protect themselves to strengthen the whole supply chain, right? Like, that's incredibly personally gratifying. And then on a personal level, back to, outdoor activities and having co-important pursuits, possibly summiting Mount Kilimanjaro next year. So
my goodness.
Yeah, big birthday year for me next year. So starting to put plans in place and got to get a training plan in place for that. So yeah, that's what's up. But I remain open to where my path takes me and different opportunities that pop up. I love being in this work. I think this may be my final career reinvention. So I think I'm in cyber until I retire. But I have no plans to retire anytime soon.
Well, my brother, Paul, who I'm calling out on the podcast here, he summited that mountain last year as part of his 60th birthday celebration.
Very nice, Paul.
So now I'm not quite 60, and I probably won't do that myself. But it was for him a life. I wouldn't say life-changing experience, but certainly like one of those life experiences.
A highlight. Yeah, absolutely.
You just don't. Well, Courtney, it's been wonderful. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you fighting the good fight and to help SMBs out there. Eventually we'll get there. Right now, it's just a matter of one step at a time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And everybody, stay secure.